We have a quorum, though.
Okay, I think we're going to dispense with the pledge and for now, public comments. Mayor and Randy, do you concur?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we will call roll. Chisel,
Here.
hold on a second. Now, turn it down, turn it down. Somebody's got to turn it down. Do I have all the council unmuted? Okay. Johanna?
Here.
Okay, I'm going to start roll. Chisel,
Here.
Neil,
Here.
Carlson,
Here.
Luz,
Here.
Bergen,
Here.
Hadley,
Here.
and Kurt just joined. He's taking a minute to log in. Okay, Mayor or Randy, you want to roll with the first item?
Sure. Consider suspending City Council Rule of Procedure VB and permitting participation by any or all council members by electronic means and to authorize a quorum by council members participating electronically. Can I get some background on that, Chad?
Yeah, so working with John Anderson on this, and in light of the council rules passed a month or two ago, city staff is recommending the council consider this action to suspend your rules during the duration of the COVID-19 response plan. This will allow for emergency measures to allow the council to meet in non-traditional means and methods during this time of crisis. This action will have the effect of suspending and superseding the council's rules of procedures, especially as they relate to electronic meetings.
You're looking for a
Feedback
vote?
terrible, FYI.
Randy and Chad, your microphones are working against each other.
Yeah. So I would ask the council, when you are not talking, to please mute your microphone yourself. Can you do that, Randy?
You're looking for a city council vote on this?
I would move for the change in the council rules.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Consent agenda.
Again, I would remind you, if you're not speaking, go ahead and mute, especially those in the room. Consent agenda consists of the minutes of the March 16, 2020 meeting, claims, expanded outdoor service area for Toppling Goliath for May 15, 2020, renew a Class C liquor license for Good Times, including Sunday sales, outdoor service area, and catering privileges. Item E, transfer of Snap Marketing liquor license to 200 Railroad Avenue. Item F, consider approval of the 2020 Farmers Market Agreement. Item G, Resolution 3062, setting a date for a public hearing on lease of farmland for the airport. Resolution 3064, acknowledging receipt of an application for voluntary annexation from Thomas J. and Barbara Mossman, and authorizing to proceed with voluntary annexation in the vicinity of Laurel Drive. Item I, change order number 1, 2019 street improvement project in the amount of $12,356.78. And change order number 2, 2019 street improvement project in the amount of $16,707.25.
This is a reminder before you make a motion and go to discussion, if there's anything that wants to be taken off or and put on the regular agenda to do so now. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion.
Mayor,
Yes,
I just have one point with the farmer's market agreement. We've got a May 1st start date. Can we reword that to when cleared by the Iowa Department of Health for outdoor gatherings? Or for gatherings?
Chad or John?
You certainly can amend that, although even if it's left in there, it's not going to override the governor's instructions regarding gatherings of people, but you certainly can. And if you do, I think the best thing to do is to have somebody pull that off of the consent agenda to discuss separately.
Is there anybody who wishes to pull that off to discuss separately? Or did you understand what John had said?
I'd like to pull it off then and discuss it.
Okay, you're asking to have it pulled off?
Yes, please.
Okay. That will be the next item then.
I would move the consent agenda with the one item removed.
Second, Hadley.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call?
Okay, Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisholm,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, then we will go to the consider approval of the 2020 Farmers Market Agreement.
I would move for approval of the agreement, but just have the understanding that if it's not cleared, because we learned today that items or places of business we thought were closed were actually open and had to be specifically called out. So I would just like to have that addendum on the end of the agreement for the start date.
I guess I'm just going to throw this out there. Won't whatever decision the state makes supersede anything that we decide? So does it really matter? I guess that's directed more towards John.
Well, that depends, of course, on what the state order is. But yes, generally speaking, if the state or the governor says thou shalt not have farmers markets or mass gatherings of 10 or more, regardless of what we say, the governor's proclamation will control. With that said, if there was any ambiguity about the governor's proclamation, you could certainly make it contingent upon the governor taking certain specific action. As we all know, the situation changes day by day, and like Randy said, some things we thought maybe were closed, somebody might have thought that it wasn't, and then governor had to clarify in regards to that. So I think you can do it either way. You can just leave it as is and go off of your interpretation of the governor's proclamation, or make it contingent upon certain action by the governor, such as lifting the ban on any type of gatherings of 10 or more people.
I support Randy's ask and having written clarification in the agreement.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think it makes a huge difference, but I'll support that as well.
I guess I mean, we're not changing other leases that we have. There's a certain amount of like, we know that things change and all the leases will change. I guess I feel like it's just more, I don't know, it just seems like, do we need to look at everything that closely, knowing that everything, that the governor's proclamation will always supersede it? But it's to me, it's not a big deal. And I guess I don't feel like we need to look at leases that closely when it comes to something like that, but.
Okay, do we have a motion yet? Or is this just discussion yet?
I had a motion by Chisholm and a second by Bergen.
And would you state what that motion was again?
To rewrite the lease so that the starting of the farmer's market would not take place until the governor has lifted
Okay.
operation of such events or activities, I believe.
Okay, any further discussion?
Of understanding between us is all I'd like at the end of the lease, that until the Department of Health clears public gathering.
Can't hear you, Randy.
Yeah. He's right. Chad, when you get done writing, could you say that again, please?
Hope nobody's a lip reader out there. No, just,
Wait,
I agree with the start time of May 1st, but if we don't get clearance from the Department of Health through the governor that public gatherings are held by then, we hold off on the start of the farmer's market until such time.
I personally
Okay.
can't see that a farmer's market that's a year after year after year tenant is going to even want to consider doing something outside of the legal parameters. So I don't think we need to vote yes on this.
Has the governor even mentioned farmers markets at all, other than just a gathering of 10 people or more?
No,
Okay. I mean, there's just a certain amount of like, I'm not sure that our governor will mention it or not mention it. So I think,
there's a certain amount of ambiguity and
yeah,
whatever, gray area, like we learned today. I mean, shopping malls are now closed and social clubs, et cetera, which I always thought were closed because they were non-essential to gathering places.
okay, so what I'm looking for is that you have a motion and a second. And so I need to know, there was no change into that. You have to vote on what was the motion and second it on first if you're going to change anything. Is that correct, Chad?
Yes, you have a motion and a second, as Randy stated.
Everybody clear what Randy stated the first time? If so, I'll call for a roll call.
Okay, Chisholm. Bergen.
Aye.
Neal.
no,
Hadley.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Luce.
No.
Okay, motion carries 5-2.
Okay. Consider amendment and update to city COVID-19 response policy. Can I give a background on that, Chad?
Okay, there is an amended response plan in the council's Dropbox. Staff is recommending a few amendments to the previously adopted response plan, most notably recommending that the restrictions and prohibition on public buildings or access to public buildings be extended to April 30. Also, suspension of non-essential board and commission meetings, with the exception that there's language in there that does allow for the city manager to allow for an essential meeting if it's in the community's best interest, for example, community development. That would be planning and zoning if there's a site plan or something that has a sensitive construction deadline, those types of things. I know the Civil Service Commission is looking at also approving its plan moving forward to hiring a sergeant. So it would be those types of situations. Probably the most significant other piece is that there have been changes to how we respond to employees' requests for time off. Most of that language is in keeping with the Federal Family Cares Act and modifying some of that language in there. At this time, I would just simply ask if the council has any questions on the policy as submitted.
Yeah, I have a question. Has any thought been given? So there's a lot of, the federal government's recommendations and the state government's recommendations aren't actually always in alignment, but now there's a recommendation by the CDC of mask wearing. And I'm curious if you've talked at the city level about wearing masks when you're in the same room with each other, employees in tight spaces. Are we going to consider that, considering the recommendations of the CDC that people wear masks?
We have touched on that a little bit at the staff level, even to the point that Wanda brought up this morning in our department head meeting that through IMWCA a while ago, we had the ability to secure some goggles with foam securing measures around the eyewear and that, and she'll look at obtaining some of those. Otherwise, we don't have anything specific in the agreement other than to follow Department of Public Health guidelines on PPEs. One, I don't know if you want to add anything on the eyewear or the...
Wanda, you're on mute. Still on mute.
Okay, I did put in that call today to IMWCA. They were checking on their supply. They didn't know if they really had any of that particular eyewear left on hand. They were going to contact their supplier who had supplied it to them in the first place to see if they could get an order put in. I didn't hear back yet today, so hopefully tomorrow I'll have an answer to that for sure. But they really were a nice pair of glasses as far as safety glasses went. And it was a couple years ago that they had sent me some pairs.
So is it safety
For
glasses
example.
and a mask? I mean, is the idea then people would be wearing both glasses and a mask at work?
Yeah, well, I was thinking this would be more important for public safety people. This eyewear would be more important for public safety people, street department people, anyone who's got to be actually out in the public.
Yeah.
No, it's not quite so bad for us here at City Hall because we're not seeing anybody
Right.
who's in here. But if you have to be outside and occasionally run into people, I thought that would be a very good enhancement to what they're doing.
Mhm.
I know it sounded like the police department have masks,
Okay.
and I know that they do have safety glasses as well. They don't have this particular type of safety glasses though. And so I think all the departments kind of wanted those, and I guess I went so far as to say, if you have to stop at the grocery store on your way home, wear them in the grocery store, because there's a lot of people around. But we'll see if I can even get them. I'm working on it.
I would note, and I know Chief Smutsler's on here, he had made a comment that he would take any masks that anybody would want to make and donate. He said he can augment what they have with the professional grade, either doubling up and making the others last longer or whatever. So I guess to answer your question, it's not specifically in the policy. We've talked about it. Those departments that need them would take them if anybody can get them, and they'll use them as necessary.
I'd make a motion to approve the
Thank you.
policy as adopted or as demonstrated.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Okay, I had a motion by Hadley, and second by Johnson. So Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel, Bergen.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing, conduct public hearing on plans, specifications, form of contract, estimated total cost, and accepting bids for the 2020 Quarry Street Storm Sewer Improvement Project. Want to give a little bit of background on that, Chad?
I'll give a little bit of background. We also have our engineering team, representatives from McClure Engineering, Jeremy Briller on as well. So I would ask for them to fill in any gaps there that I might have, Mayor, before you open it up to the general public for the public hearing portion. Bids were received last week on this primarily stormwater improvement project along Quarry Street. There were two bids received. Skyline Construction, JB Holland Construction. The apparent low bidder is Skyline Construction at $437,717.50. And again, just to refresh the council's memory on this, it's primarily a stormwater improvement project coming from the intersection of College and Quarry and extending eastward along Quarry Street to approximately the area where there are floodgates, storm sewer system that goes underneath the levee behind the Good Times restaurant area. So it will improve that area. And then it also looks at some diversion channel, if you will, mitigation in the drainage ditch above Dunning Springs. So I would ask if our engineering team has any further comments. I will mute and then we'll go public.
This is Bhushan from McClure. First of all, thank you to the council for giving us an opportunity to work on this project. And Chad actually covered it pretty well. This project covers two aspects of it. One is from along Quarry Street. It has got sidewalk improvements as well, and replacement of storm sewer system to handle the additional flow that's anticipated to come as a result of the Locust Road improvements. And then the second part is updating or putting erosion control measures along the divergent creek or divergent channel that runs just south of Locust Road down to the intersection with Dunnings Creek. As Chad mentioned, we had it was out for bid. Bids were opened March 31st, online bidding. And then, so our estimate was $488,000 for this project without contingency. With contingency is the number that you see in the background package there. And then the two bids came in at 437 odd number and 484 or some odd number. So, so we would recommend going with it's the Skyline's low bid. But yeah, that's pretty much a quick short summary. So.
Jeremy, any further comments?
Nope, I think it's been covered well. I think, like Bhushan said, it's also has some sidewalk improvements in an area that currently doesn't have any sidewalk. So other than that, primarily a stormwater project. I think it's been covered well. We'd answer any questions you have.
Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak at this public hearing?
Okay. I would ask that everybody turn down your microphones if you're in this room. I'm going to unmute all. Okay, this is the time for the public hearing on the Quarry Street project.
Okay, I think I'll have to have Randy. How do we know which one is going to be speaking? Or is there anybody who is speaking?
Well, for the record, there are two members of the public in the room with staff and Randy, and they're not saying anything. Yep, so anybody online, just give your name and address and any comments that you may have on the project.
Hearing, I'm assuming I'm not hearing from anyone. Is that
Public
what you-
comments going once? Public comments going twice?
Okay,
Mayor,
then
you may wish to close the public comment section at this time.
I'll close the public hearing. Consider resolution 3061, approving the plan specifications, form of contract, estimated total cost for the 2020 Quarry Street Storm Sewer Improvement Project. Contract.
Mayor, I'm going to mute everybody. I'm going to mute all.
Okay,
Okay. Everybody's muted, so council chime back in if you are ready for action.
I'd move acceptance of the Skyline bid for the project.
do I have a second?
Second by Hadley.
Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, consider ordinance 1244, an ordinance establishing the Decorah Sustainability Commission. This is the second reading.
I'd move
And
the second
just
reading.
staff report on this, we've received no comments from the public at City Hall on this item.
I'd move the second reading of the ordinance.
Can we at the same time within that, can we waive the third? Or do we have to make that a separate motion?
That's a separate motion, Emily.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
You could second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Luce and a second by Bergen. Any further discussion?
The mayor was saying something, but she was muted.
Mayor Borowski?
Nope, that's fine. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel? No. Neal,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
I'd like to move waiving the third reading and approval.
Video copy radio from Pandora. Did you know you can play music on all your Apple devices at once?
I second that.
So the correct terminology would be to waive the third reading and adopt.
I'd like to adopt this. Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Luce and a second by Neal. Discussion?
I think with no public comments and the intent of the council is to establish this, it makes sense to go ahead and do it.
Especially since the sustainability plan addresses the sustainability and resiliency of Decorah. There would be no better time to get the commission active and tasked.
Okay, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel, Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Consider ordinance 1242, increasing water rates. That's the second reading.
I move to approve ordinance 1243.
Thank
Second.
you.
To be
Amy?
clear, Johanna, it's 1242, water rates first.
Second.
1242.
I was, not a biggie.
Any discussion?
I had Chisel and Bergen.
Nobody heard Chisel.
Sorry.
It's not you. I think it's the people at City Hall.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's people at City Hall.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Correct, Chad?
Yeah, and sorry, we've got 4 different devices in this room and they're all fighting against each other. So we keep adjusting volumes and microphones. Sorry. So we had a motion by Bergen and a second
Okay.
by Carlson, and I'll read it that way then. Bergen,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Hi.
Chisel.
I would move to waive the third reading and adopt ordinance 1242.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Hi.
Bergen.
Aye.
Okay, and just a reminder, this will go into effect July 1.
I think it's there you go. Thank you, Randy. Okay, ordinance 1243, increasing sewer rates, second reading.
I'd move the second reading of 1243.
I second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Hi.
Chisel, Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Are you unmuted?
I'd move to waive the third reading of ordinance 1243 and adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call?
Okay. Let's see. We have Chisel, Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal,
Hi.
Hadley,
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, consider resolution 3063, supporting national legislation to enact a carbon fee and dividend program to reduce polluting and climate changing carbon emissions and declare an emergency. This was brought forward, and I think Kurt brought it forward first, and it came from the Northeast Iowa Citizens Climate Lobby. And Lyle Audie has presented this to you. I'm looking to see some guidance as to what you'd like to do with this, whether you need more information, whether you're ready to pass the resolution. I'm looking for guidance from the council on that.
I'm looking to, I support passing the resolution. I think it's aligned with our sustainability plan. It's something that we've made commitments to ourselves. And I think what we're doing by passing this resolution is saying to the rest of the nation in Iowa and those senators and congressmen who support it, this is where the direction we want to go. So I think it's a good bill. It's bipartisan. I think it is a community better.
I agree.
If you have any questions, Lyle is on the call, I believe, but you'd have to unmute him. So are there any questions that you want to bring forth, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I just wanted to echo the thoughts that have been said already. Thank you, Kirk, for being willing to shepherd this onto the agenda for us. And just a thank you to the Northeast Iowa Citizens Climate Lobby. They've been very helpful and proactive in their communication and education, not only with us at council, but also in the community, and agree that this is in line with the current sustainability work we are engaged in.
I move for approval of Resolution 3063.
I'll second it.
Okay, I do have some questions.
Discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
If we're going to go for, this is terrible. If we're, okay, now it's not echoing up here. Okay. Won't this increase the fees charged by the energy companies so that they have the money to pay back? So it's really not any reductions of anything. It's just a pass through, but yet they're going to take administrative fees out of it, which is going to raise our energy rates. And by doing that, then you're going to make it more difficult on low and moderate income residents. It appears in my reading of this that it's just a form of wealth redistribution being pushed onto us through this climate change initiative. So I'm not in support of this.
Chad, do you want to unmute Lyle if he wanted to make any comments?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think Randy and I discussed this online, and I pointed out that the refund is going to help people of low and moderate incomes more than people in the upper income brackets. So they will feel it a lot more. The rate increases for gasoline, for example, would be taken care of largely by the nearly $300 a month the individuals in the country would get when this is fully in effect.
I mean, you see it, I've noticed you see it working in other countries. I think Canada has a similar program, and it seems to be working well across the country and reducing carbon emissions overall.
If we don't make some kind of a statement about the amount of fossil fuel subsidies that are being done while adding support for this, I won't vote for it, because the $400 billion that's utilized for fossil fuel subsidies that encourage these companies to continue mining and doing efforts to continue using fossil fuels speaks much more and is so embedded into our laws that if we don't start talking about getting rid of subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, we're not going to ever stop and reach the tipping point of going into looking at renewable energy. So I would vote against it unless we speak toward fossil fuel subsidies being attacked as well.
So is there
That's a different battle for a different day. That's what I thought.
Yeah, is there a way that I mean, I think right now they're just asking us to support a piece of legislation. I'm not in favor of what you're saying, Steve. I'm just not sure why we would vote against this. It's not to me either or, right? It's let's do this, and then when something comes our way that'll do the other, let's do that too. But
yeah, if you wanted us to support eliminating subsidies on fossil fuels separately, we could do that. But I agree. I don't know that not supporting something to make a political message on a local level is.
This is low-hanging fruit compared to what could be done. And if we just take low-hanging fruit, we don't advance what needs to be done. That's my point. So I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you for explaining your vote.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
No.
Chisel, Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-2.
Hey, thank you. Okay. You want to, I think maybe what I'll do, Chad, is that you talk about the department reports. I know we have some department people on and some that aren't.
Okay, Mayor, thanks. Yeah, I don't have much of a report, and I did give the department heads the opportunity to opt out. Several of them did submit their reports in written format, and those are in your Dropbox. I think I emailed most of those to the council earlier today as well. I think the only other thing that I would add is that staff continues to practice all of the measures that are before us in terms of social distancing, separation of staff, limiting contact with each other. I think they're all doing very well at that. They're taking this very seriously. They understand the impact of, or the implications of not doing so on continuation of government and providing the critical services that our community is accustomed. I don't think I have anything else to add, but I know Wanda has a couple of comments.
Hey, Wanda?
You gotta unmute.
There you got it once.
Okay.
There you go. Now,
Oh, got it. Hands free. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so our office is back to being fully staffed. For 2 weeks, we were working on rotating shifts between the payroll clerk, the deputy clerk, the utility billing clerk, and our maintenance staff. Rotating shifts are pretty challenging in our office due to the specific job duties of each position. But we've got them all back this week due to workload. I've done what I can to separate staff, given our space limitations here, but we're doing the best we can. And as Chad said, all our staff remains committed to having a safe, secure environment here at City Hall, as well as our other departments. Okay, I was advised last week, I've received an estimate from the state on our road use tax funds. Road use, the estimate is a 25% reduction on road use funds. That's kind of due to the reduced travel. There's been a 40% drop in traffic statewide. Kind of the expectation that vehicle sales is going to drop off dramatically here, and that has a big impact on those road use funds, and of course fuel prices. So anyway, those initial estimates showed 25% reduction. The April deposit probably will not reflect that entire impact because those traffic drops didn't happen until like the middle of March. But probably our May deposit will fully reflect the impacts of COVID-19. I expect that probably lost and hotel motel tax will be affected more severely. We really won't probably know that till more like mid-April, because now at the end of March is when those sales taxes due, and the end of the quarter, those quarterly reports are submitted. So we won't know that probably till mid to the end of April. I will keep you advised as soon as I get information from the state on what their estimates are. I will let you know. It's very difficult for me to have any kind of guess on that because I don't have access to those records. So we sit and we wait. And then last but not least, certainly, I would really encourage everybody, all our residents to, even though we're in the midst of this and it's kind of dominating all the news, but to remember to participate with the census count. That's got a huge impact and it's really important for our future. COVID-19 is going to pass, but we're going to have that census count for the next 10 years. Just as a quick reminder to people, our federal representatives are apportioned based on that census count. Our state legislative districts and city wards are determined using the census count. Census data is used to distribute over $675 billion in federal funding. For every 1% of Iowans that go uncounted, it costs the state as much as $38 million in federal funding. Road use funds are directly based on those census counts, and the funding for schools and Northeast Iowa Community Action are significantly impacted by those counts. And I could go on and I won't, but it really does make a big difference for our community. So I would encourage everyone to participate.
Wanda, I have a question.
Yep.
Would you, I think Emily's maybe in with census, but would you also make the comment we talked about waiving and no shut-offs and such for people who are having issues with utility bills and such? I know there are many.
Yep, we've had those discussions here. We aren't going to be sending out shut-offs, and we will work with people as much as possible to on their bills and get them paid and give them more time to get those paid. We'll kind of follow our normal practice of, trying to encourage partial payments and for people to pay what they can, but we will not be sending out shut-offs, and we will do everything we can to work with people.
Okay.
My question is actually, it's about census. Wanda, can you tell us just a little bit about what is the city's marketing or the city's role been in getting the word out about completing the census? I noticed our Facebook feed, rightly so, is talking about COVID, but how can we make sure that from the city of Decorah, we're doing everything we can to market and PR that filling out the census?
Okay, so our Complete Count Committee was working very actively on getting people prepared for this and getting that word out. I don't know if you heard the PSAs that went out from numerous organizations. They were on the radio stations, they were in the newspaper, and I know they were on like 7 different radio stations from K-Bike. I mean, they put them on all their stations that they own. So we were working on all that. We had flyers, and we were going to put up what do you call them? Little information tents in the restaurants. We were going to have all these things printed. We were going to have flyers printed as stuffings and bank statements and stuff like that. Of course, we just ended that at the end of February because we thought that was not going to have any impact because there wasn't going to be anybody in restaurants or out and about to see those posters or to see those informational tents. So we kind of had to go with what we had at that point, and that's those PSAs that have been on the radio and in the newspaper. We got started very late on that census count committee because the state was kind of behind or I shouldn't say the state, but the federal government was kind of behind in starting this census, those complete count committees. Certainly not as proactive as things were 10 years ago.
Right.
But we have done what we can, and I guess what will be will be. We have worked hard for Luther because I have serious concerns about all the Luther kids at home.
Yeah.
There's nobody there. I am told by the Census Bureau that they will allow colleges to submit those their school registrations online.
Oh, so the schools will submit for one, essentially.
The schools will submit. And I asked, I said, well, okay, that's fine, that's great, but aren't families going to register them at home as well? Well, they claim that they have a way to cross-check that. So
I had a question about that too. You were saying that you had prepared maybe flyers for restaurants and such. Is there any way that Walmart and Fairway and the co-op would do a flyer in people's bags or at the end of the line, or I just know a lot of people that haven't filled out the census, and I've noticed. So I put it all over my Facebook page. I talked to everyone about it, but I'm nervous. I'm very nervous that
I'm nervous too, trust me. And we've had, the last 2 census events, we've had tremendous participation in Decorah, and those, our complete count committees have worked very proactively. And, we did what we could this year, and then of course everything came to a stop. We could rethink that and maybe have some of those flyers printed up and see if places like Walmart and the co-op would put them in the bags when people or have them there. Like a lot of people at Walmart, when I've been there most recently, the checkout lines aren't even open. The only thing that's open is the self-check. Thank you. The self-check lines. So
Wanda, I wondered similarly if an ask could be made to the food pantry. I know they've drastically changed their distribution process with having bags of food already prepared, but would there be an opportunity to have flyers printed for them to include in each package?
Sure.
Yeah.
And we just didn't want to spend money because we have no money budgeted for this and we're not getting any from the federal government. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on something that might be ineffective. So I was just, as we talked about this through our committee, we decided to, do what we did. But we can certainly do that if you'd like.
The other thing I'd encourage is if we do a little bit more PR, I have found what people find most interesting is what the census data is used for. So I think a lot of people have the idea that the census data is used to track, Americans, but it's actually about population data. And like that list that you were like, there's so much. When people see that list or hear about that, I think they're more likely to fill out the census than just like, they want to know, your nationality and your ancestry and what the color of your skin is, right? They actually want to know that you are here so that they can give you money to be here, kind of thing. It's important.
Yeah. And we can do that. And that's what those PSAs were designed to do.
Yeah.
The city I had several people, Dave Smutzler did one, Jeremy did one, I did one. The school did, I think, 3 or 4. Northeast Iowa Community Action did about 5 or 6 of them. I mean, so we've had a lot of different organizations doing them so that everyone could get their own message out. So it wasn't just all coming from the city. And so that message is out there now, whether, like I said, it's on people's Facebook pages, it's in the newspaper, it's been in the newspaper, it's been on the radio stations. I mean, we will continue with that, certainly, that piece, and I will contact the newspaper and the radio stations tomorrow and make sure that those are continuing to be played.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But they told me they would be, so.
Yeah, and Wanda, to your credit and the complete count committee's credit, I think using Chief and Jeremy and yourself using sort of that personal influence connected with the data points is a very strong tactic for us to be using right now. I think we know your faces, so just kudos to that, and I appreciate knowing that those can continue to be shared.
Thank you very much. I turned mine in already, so. Any other department head reports? Yeah, I have been approached by many people as far as the masks are concerned. I've been looking both at CDC, World Health Organization, the Iowa Department of Public Health, and talking with Kristen Vanderbrink as well. I think that somewhat where they can be very beneficial, they can also lead to a false indication that it's okay if you've got your mask on. So there's a lot of things to consider. I think there's some great guidelines about the circumstances for use. If you've got a cold, if you've got whatever, yeah, you need a mask. If you've got family members that have it, you need masks. And then the proper care and positioning of the mask. So there's a lot of information out there. And I think one of my main thoughts is how do we connect with people who maybe really need one or want one, but can't figure out how to get one. I do know that there have been several individuals and groups of people that are making them. I know the UU has a group making, and I believe there was some masks that were to go to the Winnebago Medical, to the hospital. I know that the homes have got masks. So the volume of what's needed is great. And so it's a matter of continuing to get information out to the public as far as where they can find masks, what's available, what's the appropriate use. What type of things are other council members hearing out in the community?
I had a request. I don't know if it's easy for Christina to mute or unmute so you can follow up if you want. I thought that the message that came out from the chamber just a bit earlier was a really great collection of usable information, both if you were making masks and could contribute or you had questions about instructions. Is that a message that the city could amplify or spread as well? I think you said totally, but we actually can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's like a cell phone commercial. So the information I shared in that actually came from Roxy, the quilt store, but Shirley Vermace is kind of organizing things locally. So she's a great contact. The information is also all on the chamber's website under a How You Can Help tab. I think one important thing is if you're wanting them to go to a nursing home or to a hospital or whatever, that you really should check with them to find out what their specifications and qualifications are, because those things are changing and the CDC changes guidelines. And after I sent that email today, I got more information actually on sewing gowns for facilities too. So I think, yeah, if you just head to the chamber's website, and I can put something on our Facebook page too.
I had asked Kristen to put on the city webpage too from the Iowa Department of Health. There's patterns. There's quite a few patterns that are out there.
That's all linked on the chamber's page too.
I have mine over here. I have a question. I mean, I do think, as I mentioned earlier with just the city wearing masks, that there is this sort of delayed response of like what the national recommendation is, what the state recommendation is. IDPH doesn't always align with the CDC, but it appeared to me that the other day nationally, it was said that all people in public should be wearing masks. And I am curious, you know, we talked about this earlier with the whole like shelter in place. I don't suggest the city create a mandate, but I would strongly recommend that if we were in agreement that the city put out that we would encourage people in public to wear masks. I mean, that seems to be what the city or the CDC is suggesting. It's what physicians are saying. And they get that data by looking at other countries who have gone through this. The countries and the places where masks are being worn fare better than those that don't. And given the resources we have in our community, in terms of our medical resources, they're already struggling to not have enough gowns and masks. So if we all wore masks, that would just be less sicker people wandering around Decorah. But
I think too that if you do that, then also along with that is the fact that you still have to stay home, and that you still have to be 6 feet apart. Because, I mean, any of that would be worth putting together for promotional for the citizens of Decorah, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and making sure that you wash your hands.
Yeah.
Because even if you wear a mask and you touch your face and then don't wash your hands, you negate some of the work of the mask. So yeah, I think careful messaging is important.
Well, and I think the other important thing is we need to look at where we're at as a county and as a state right now. And I know we used Unicast before to praise Decorah and Winnebago County. Well, now we need to look at it again. And I just put the link, which it gives you a report card on your social distancing. And we're not doing very well. Winnebago County is now at a D with 31 other counties. 44 counties have an F. 20 counties have a D-. There's only 2 Bs and 2 Cs in the entire state. Iowa as a whole is at a D-, which puts us in the bottom of 20% of the nation. So I think we need to definitely make a better coordinated effort to tell everyone, to take this seriously, because I feel like still people are not taking it that seriously. And I think masks go along with that. And I do agree with Emily. I don't think we can mandate them unless we, provide them to people. And obviously we can't provide them to people. So, but I think encouraging that is a step in the right direction.
Hey, Andy, where do you find, how do they determine the social distancing?
They use ping data from cell phones.
Okay. Oh, there you go. That's right.
I just put it in the right hand column. So if you go to chat, Lorraine, you should be able to click on it there and open it in a separate window.
Okay.
Paul, if you would maybe
good.
put out a notice there too about that, that'd be great. But yeah, anyways, just we did great before, but we're slipping.
Yeah, and I think we have to be, Alameda County has 17 cases as of today, right? If we go doubling that and tripling that in the next week, quadrupling that, that's right next door to us. And I don't understand the whole 4 cases in Winnebago County. Either we are just blessed and lucky, or we're still not testing enough. But it's really only a matter of time. And I do wonder, we have these ideas, but how does the city sort of take a message that's from the city of Decorah? This is what we, the school district sends out their message. Winnebago Medical sending out their message. Public Health is sending out their message. The Chamber sending out their message. I'd really like to see like the city of Decorah blank message going out as well. But
So Chief
We are doing those
Smutzler
press
has a
releases.
question here. Chief.
I don't. I was taking a look at the chat room and writing down the address that Andy had brought up on the screen.
Hey, you learned something. I didn't realize the chat, if you put that on, then you get to see what people are talking about. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, no worries.
and for people who don't have the chat, it's the unicast.com, www.unicast.com COVID-19.
Thank you.
Social distancing scoreboard. If you're not having access to the chat, that's what it's saying.
So I do believe after our last discussion, I think it was like last Monday evening or Tuesday evening maybe, as part of a release that we sent out, and it's on our website and we sent it to the media, we didn't have wear masks, but we had all these points in there about, washing hands, sheltering in place, social distancing, all those things that we've been talking about were in that press release. So it's not like, we have sent those things out.
Oh no, yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not meaning that we haven't. I'm just meaning that there's always seems to be new guidelines, and I guess I'd like to see masks being part of our new messaging. Maybe that's
okay.
I know.
Yeah, no one's saying that we're not doing a good job or that you're not doing a good job. We think you
No,
guys are
I know.
doing a
I
great
just
job.
didn't want to make sure you realized that we had done that.
No, yeah.
So
I think it's too like everything is like day by day it changes all the time.
It does.
And I think those messages can be incorporated, Wanda, between you and Kristen in the public safety to update and provide more so that people know where to go look to find patterns or whatever they're looking at, and encouraging people to continue to do all the things that have been laid out.
I think the federal government initially didn't want or wanted to dissuade just regular folks from having masks because they were in such short supply for medical professionals. But now as things have gone on and people are making them, and and it makes some sense to wear a handkerchief or anything.
Yeah.
I think that's where the changes come from. It's the CDC just knows that if you're wearing a mask, even if it's not an N95 or whatever, you're at least protecting others from your virus if you have it.
And a nod to Dr. Hippen for his letter and bringing it to the forefront of our conversation. In
Very
addition to
much so.
washing
Yeah.
washing hands and social distancing.
I appreciate that. Okay, any other reports?
I should mention that we do have a utility meeting after this. I'd like to take a 2-minute bathroom break if that's all right, before we start that up.
I think that's a great idea. There's nothing else. Motion to adjourn this meeting. We'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Chisholm move to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, so since
Second.
the chair stepped out for personal duty, we will convene the utility meeting when he comes back.
Schmutzler went to San Francisco, is that right?
Chad, can we just stay in this meeting or is it a separate link?
No, we're staying in this meeting.
I bet that, Ross, it's probably be a little hard standing in the middle of downtown for the whole meeting.
Yeah, Ross, how has it been standing downtown? There doesn't seem like there's a lot of traffic behind you.
No, people are doing a good job of social distancing, and I've got on a light long johns.
Hey, would everyone like to hear my dogs barking?
There they are.
It's neighborhood watch all day long.
Oh, are we putting our dogs on now?
I like the outer space, Chief. Oh,
So
no.
you'll need to check out.
No.
There you go. Chief's getting into this now.
Oh,
How'd you get the Decorah, Ross? Send me that one.
Hey, do you have to pay for the monthly fee in order to put the picture in the background like that?
No, well, we should have it on this Zoom account. Can't you do it?
yeah, I just had to update my computer to be able to do it.
I'll check with, I know where to go to get it. I just don't know how to put the virtual background in. Another lesson for another day.
We could all take virtual tours of our offices. Or for me, it's my bedroom because everybody else is out there.
There's been a lot of different Zoom meetings going on, I know.
Ready to roll whenever you guys are.
Okay, Andy's back. So Andy, I'll let you call the meeting to order. You have 2 items on the agenda. Again, I would just preface by saying my apologies for not getting the agenda out directly to council. It did get dropped in the Dropbox with background notes for both the franchise agreement and the water-only, sewer-only customer account policy. So Andy, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
All right, we'll call the utility meeting to order. First, we're going to discuss regarding electricity or the electric utility franchise agreement. I think really what this boils down to is a couple of things. One are the terms, and then the second would be the franchise fee, 1 or 2%. I think those are kind of where we're at, and whether or not we can come to an agreement to put forth some sort of a counter or accept what they've already accepted. Or I mean, this is basically an open discussion to see where everyone's at. Obviously a lot is riding as far as is the Locust project contingent on getting this done? I don't know that answer. I guess, what do you guys think?
I guess my first my first thoughts are that I'd like to continue negotiating with 1 point. If they would like the 5-year, then I would like to add back in the language that if we do wind up at the utility board in 3 years, that if the utility board rules in the favor of Decorah and reassigns territory, that the franchise agreement becomes null. So I'd be okay with a 5-year, but if we get to the utility board and get it done quicker, I don't want to be, I don't want Alliant to be essentially reaping the costs from Decorah for another 2 years beyond what they need to be. I think when we get the go-ahead from the utility board, we would want to go ahead. And so I'd like to see that clause added back in with a 5-year.
Does anyone agree or disagree with that? I could go along with that.
I'm in.
I'm not privy to having heard what the Alliant response was from us saying that we wanted to get the finalized feasibility study that they had. So I'm not real curious to finish anything until they do what they said they would do, of giving us the feasibility study finalized.
Chad, did that come up in your discussion with them?
It did not, at least not recently. If we talked about that, it would have been several months ago.
And do you recall what their stance was, or if they gave you an answer when you did talk about it?
I don't think I got an answer other than to say that they had submitted updated information as part of their testimony to the IUB. It might have been that long ago.
Okay.
They were at a utility meeting and I asked for it. I remember that.
Emily, I can't hear you.
Oh, I said there was a utility meeting in the fall, late fall, where they were at the meeting and we had asked for it there. But I don't know that we've seen it since then. I mean, we haven't seen it, but we did ask for it at a utility meeting.
I would support that request being made in writing.
Yep, agreed.
I share concerns that were voiced about accepting a franchise agreement that has only a 5-year out. I think that it does not seem to be in the best interest of the citizens of Decorah based on our recent history with Alliant over the last couple of years. And it's disconcerting to me that this is the sort of final issue in the agreement that we can't come to terms on. Disconcerting because it seems so clearly only in advantage to Alliant to have this 5-year window and not an advantage to our citizenship. So I definitely could support sort of a return to the table with Alliant in the frame, Emily, that you just provided there, but would need some sort of contingency in writing that gives the city more flexibility.
So my understanding is that they want 5 years and then they're willing to go 2 years and then they're willing to go 4 years, 3 years, what, for the third window?
5, 7, 12, is it not, Chad? And then obviously at the 15 mark too.
It's 5, 7, 12, and then 15-year max agreement.
So it's 5, 2, 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so why not make it 2, 5, 5? Seems really easy.
I think we know why they won't accept that.
I'm just saying, we're just.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I think it's pretty obvious why they're not doing that.
I know. I do also think, here's the thing. It's that there's a certain, it should be a no-brainer to Alliant in terms of, it's not, because obviously they want 2 more years of getting revenue. But once the utility board made a decision to reassign territory, at that point, they're also telling you what the system is worth. So they're saying it's like you're buying a house, but then they're going to buy a house and they get to live in it, but we're not going to have to pay them for any upgrades that they do to that house because we've already gotten a settlement in terms of what we're going to owe them. So to me, it seems like, why would they want to stay in it if we got through the utility board in 3 years or 4 years, right? I just want to know that if the utility board rules in our favor, they're not essentially renting our house from us when we can take full ownership at that point.
If I was looking at the franchise agreement or the electric franchise, it was 4 second. I think in there it's 2%. Was there a discussion whether it should be 1% or 2%?
Yes.
But it'd be helpful if we stayed on one. I mean, are we all in agreement to go back to them and ask that, and then we could move on to the fee? Is that what we're thinking?
They don't have anything to do with what is set for the franchise agreement. We set that.
I guess the
The
confusion
franchise
for
fee, I
me, so it was 2%, that's what was asked now?
The last conversation that we settled on was talking about 1 is what everybody usually does. But we talked about if we did 2, it would actually generate about the same fee as what the citizenry had been paying previously for the environmental refunds that they had been getting from Alliant. So by going to 2%, we talked about that it would be a very comparable bill to what they had been used to.
Okay.
The problem is the bill isn't going to be comparable because they jacked up rates so double digits. So
Right.
it's not a comparable bill. You're still going to add on more to that. That's
We're not adding.
Well, I understand that, but it's getting passed on to the consumer. So in a way, we are controlling that to a certain degree.
Which is why I think the ultimate goal of lowering costs for our constituents is important. And so,
Which is what we do when we get the municipalization accomplished.
right, but I think in order to get that accomplished, we're going to need some funding off that franchise fee if we sign one.
And that's why I'm suggesting the 2%. Because my understanding is a 1% is a generation of $95,000. So every percent we do, we get that much money into our coffers to decide what we want to do with. Am I mistaken on that?
That's right.
No, each 1% generates roughly $95,000. I had sent some information around as well because council had asked how that's broken down by industry. So that was in that email I sent last week. I think specifically you were looking at the impact on nonprofit and governmental entities. And within that $95,000 for each 1%, the nonprofit governmental sector is around $18,000, I think it was.
Other than the 5-year out, have they come back and answered every question that you wanted them to answer?
Feasibility.
Writing.
Yeah, no, but they haven't given us a feasibility study.
But they did write a no cost to the city as far as when there's a building and stuff, correct?
I think it would be pertinent to note that technically I've seen a response to direct questions that have been issued in writing. Some of those answers have been less than detailed. Particularly concerning to me was the immovability in offering a second cost proposal to the Locust Street Improvement Project. That answer left a lot of assumptions open. And I think it's an example of the lack of communication and poor level of communication between Alliant and the city, that when we ask reasonable questions, we don't always get full reasonable responses.
I would have to agree with Johanna on that.
Ditto.
I think obviously what I've said before is a justification to the citizens as far as with the time frame being as close as it is without being able to get revenue in from the revenue that we could be getting in if the franchise agreement was in place. what that revenue can be used for as far as moving forward. And looking at a time frame that we should have this in place prior to working with Locust Road. Can you address some of those questions?
I mean, I guess I would, oh, go ahead.
Oh, Mayor, I just wanted to ask for a quick clarification of the use revenue. I'm wondering if you mean sort of like the removal of a potential cost, because there is not revenue for the city, whether we have a franchise agreement or not. I feel like we are being threatened with potential costs that we may or may not need to pay, either as the city or as individual taxpayers.
But if we had if we had a revenue, if we had a franchise agreement in place currently, we would be able to be getting levy revenue. Is that correct?
Well, really only if we add a 2%. If we do a 1%, it's kind of a wash because we won't be getting local options. We won't be getting the sales tax, right? So at 1%, it's a wash. At 2%, we would be getting some revenue to potentially fund an MEU or do whatever we wanted with, right? Which with the gas franchise agreement, I think that goes to sidewalks currently and to a stormwater utility fee. So 1% of that would be a wash because I would assume we would still continue to fund codes. And so if we don't go to 2%, it's a total wash. But I do think, yeah, I mean, I feel like we're talking about two different issues and it's important. And then also just the transparency of Alliant in general. If we were to sign a franchise agreement, I wonder, it's hard to enter into an agreement with a company that doesn't seem to be very forthcoming with information when you ask it.
Hey, Chad, you had listed how much revenue we would be getting in if we had a franchise agreement currently in place. Is that correct?
Yes, that was those were the numbers I just went through a minute ago.
The 95 and 90, so
right.
95.
Chad.
I think it's important to use the words franchise agreement and franchise fee separately in this discussion.
Yes. And the
Chad.
franchise fee, going back to an earlier comment, the franchise fee is entirely at council's discretion. Alliant won't resist whatever council wants to put in there. It doesn't mean anything to them other than that they have to administer it, collect it as a pass-through and send it to the city. Ross, did you have a question?
Not regarding the franchise agreement itself, but just from a time standpoint, has the project-specific agreement been looked at all?
Yeah, that's what I think Johanna or Emily were alluding to in terms of just moving the utilities out of the way of the construction project and how they answered that question. I think it was Johanna said that there was not a lot of detail there in terms of how they responded to that question. But that was the intent of, or getting at the heart of, what does it look like for a project specific? In other words, move the utilities so they're out of the way of the construction project. What would that cost? I think that was question number 3 or question number 4.
Yeah, they didn't answer it.
Right.
They just said it would be expensive and time consuming.
Oh, no.
Savings are minimal, they said.
So Andy, I think I heard from you that the next step would be to sit down with Alliant. You want to try to set that up?
Well, I mean, are we all agreeable that we put in a clause that Emily recommended? And then I guess where are we at with, I guess we don't even have to discuss the 1 or the 2%, but I feel like that could be contingent on whether or not people vote for the 5-year.
Right.
Or am I wrong on that?
No, I think that's right. I would want to, I think I said this in an email or something. When we talk to Alliant again, I really want to see I would like to see a negotiating team, not just Chad, but I would like to see council members there as well.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
And I would add, I think I gave him that question about having the out contingent on a response or action from the IUB. They were not interested in entertaining that language.
Yeah, I think I seem to remember that too, but I guess, is it more important that maybe we get that in writing?
Yeah,
I think
I'd
that,
like to see them write that down.
yeah, I think I'd prefer that as well. So maybe if they want to reject that first and then we sit down.
Well, I would agree with Emily. I think you're at a point where
I think so.
a lot of other questions, need for more clarification, expanded answers, that it feels like you really should just sit down with them and negotiate from here on as a team.
Okay.
I would agree with that too. I think a face-to-face with a team would be better than going back and forth with writings.
When you have been at the table with them before, Chad, do you bring John with you?
No, it's been just me. John and I consult quite a bit.
Yeah.
He's not been at the meetings. And early on, that was something that the representatives from Alliant and I talked about, is whether we wanted legal counsel at the table. And we both decided it'd be better to not have them for either side, so they don't bring them either.
Okay.
Andy, do you have a potential team that you might consider?
It's called Anyone Who's Interested. That's my team. And I will say, this is like the longest game of ping pong I've ever played, going on about 2 years now. And we have negotiated as a team before. I know Ross has been with me. I know, Johanna, I think, has sat in on a meeting or two. Emily has.
No, I've never been there with Alliant.
Oh, not with Alliant, no. But you've been involved in some of these conversations. But yeah, it's been a long process, to say the least. So if that's a route that we want to go, then I guess I'm fine with that. So yeah, anyone who would like to volunteer to be on that, I think preference may be given to utility board or utility members, but.
So Randy had a comment about it being the utility committee.
Okay.
I'd like to be there.
I don't think we should shut anyone out who wants to participate.
No, I don't think so either.
So if any council member wants to participate, I have no issue with that. I mean, we'll have a quorum anyway, so I don't think it really matters if we have the whole utility board there, or the utility committee, excuse me. So that's where I stand on it, but if anyone else disagrees, we can argue.
I'd be interested in sitting in, so if you could just carbon copy me on a date, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, yeah.
But maybe the question is anyone not interested in being in it? In which case, then it's just the council and Alliant.
Yeah, I mean.
That's good.
Well, that brings the issue of a council meeting, open meeting, how Alliant is going to be willing to talk or not in public.
The same, I mean, we're in the same boat. I mean, that's how it's going to be for us too. If we have 4 of us there, and I'm okay with it being public. Let them say what they want to say in public.
Say, I think I would like to entertain an idea to have Andy and Emily and Ross be the negotiating team, because I think then you've got the street committee in there, utility committee, and then the person on the council who's probably the most knowledgeable about MEUs.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. Kirk, are you just trying to get out of the meeting?
No, I just want to have a good negotiation.
I know, I'm just kidding. No, I would have no issue with that. But once again, I don't want to, dissuade anyone from coming. I want it to be open, and if people want to come, and I have no issue with having it in public.
I know we walk a balancing of how do we respond efficiently and effectively in places where we need to be business minded while also being government, and then this other side of public information. So my goal would be that we have the most efficient negotiating experience, keeping time considerations forefront in can this move forward quickly. If that was a team that was less than a full council or a quorum or something, I would definitely like us to issue our summary, public information, openly share what we brought to the table, what that discussion is. I think it's important. Our citizens have been very involved for more than 2 years in understanding utilities in our community. They get it, and I really want to make sure that they hear messaging from us about the stances that we're taking and the approaches that we're moving forward, whether or not those approaches are met favorably. Sorry, that was a long time winded way to say, like, I think we should have our own press release after whatever negotiation happens. Doesn't matter how many of us are at that table.
Well,
Or before. I mean, there's a reason we can't write a press release about this particular meeting too, right? I mean, we sent a franchise agreement to Alliant of what we thought was in the city's best interest, and they wrote us back, and we're going to negotiate more because we don't feel as if the current franchise agreement right now is meeting the needs of Decorah.
Having a small group is that then I feel like then we have to come back to the council and say, okay, here's what we discussed and here's where we're at, and then then we go back again. I don't know. It just seems to take. It's starting to take a while.
We're not actually discussing anything that should be proprietary, right? So there's no reason that Alliant shouldn't be willing to discuss this in the public eye. And
I don't think they're shying away from that.
What? Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying, that in terms of whether or not there are 3 of us there or 4 of us there or all of us there. I'm just saying that I agree that it should, however we can do this in the most time effective way.
Right.
But be able to have a frank conversation about what we feel represents the citizens of Decorah best.
Well, they've wasted our time in not giving us the franchise or the feasibility study final report. And I'm not about to waste any more time, so I don't want to do anything until we get that report.
I would agree with you, other than I don't know that that's going to help us sign the franchise agreement. I mean, I don't know that the only thing that's going to tell us is how far off, their original study was from this new study. And we can.
But there's nothing wrong with all of us knowing the leveling the playing field is my point.
Well, I guess how long are you waiting to wait then, Steve? I mean, what if they don't give you one? Are you just gonna just wait and wait?
Chad, could we just ask if we do schedule a meeting that they bring the copy of it with them? I think just asking again that they bring it with when they come to negotiate is.
Are we not on record of having asked for this?
We should be. I asked for it at a utility meeting. I don't know what utility meeting notes look like. But
They're on record of saying that they were in the near future going to get it to the city. So I just want to document it so when they don't do it, we just decide to cut bait and use it as a bargaining chip with the Iowa Utility Board.
Yeah.
It'd be jerks to a city who is basically lost because we can't do anything unless our utility won't.
That's a really interesting point you bring up there, Steve. So Alliant, as part of the settlement in the Iowa Utilities Board hearing for the last rate case, because essentially of the way that they treated Decorah, was tasked with writing a community engagement plan and how they were going to engage with their consumers to be more transparent. They just released that document today. There's nothing in it that in any way speaks to what we're asking, which is like, give us the information when we ask for it to city government. So it would be interesting to let the utilities board know that we've asked repeatedly for a document that we don't get. I mean, it would be nice maybe if the utility board
We were even lied to, if you want to. We were told that they would give it to us in the next. That was their answer to a question in the Winneshiek meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean, we could certainly write the utilities board and say we haven't gotten this document.
So no, I don't want to go forever, Andy, but I do want us to get something that they were told we would get.
I don't disagree, Steve. I guess I'm just wondering, like, what's our timeline? How long do we wait?
The longer we wait, it's their advantage. I mean, that's the problem, is that right now with Locust Road pending, with if they really are going to use their tariff as a strong arm against us in terms of signing a franchise agreement, which I believe they're doing, then the longer we wait, quite honestly, the more it's going to hurt us. So I would say we should negotiate this thing to the end that we can here. And then if it
Define
takes
us.
anywhere, what?
Define us. It's going to hurt us.
Decorah. It's in Decorah's, I mean, quite honestly, if we wait another year and then sign a 5-year, that just makes it now 5, 6, 7, 8 years since the last vote, right? All I'm saying is that if we're ultimately going to sign a 5-year agreement, I don't know that we are, but if we ultimately are, the sooner we do it, the sooner we're out of it. But
Emily, going back to something you said that Alliant released today, what was that? You called that?
so I can share it with folks. I'm afraid to click out of here and then not get back.
No, don't do it. You don't have to do it now. I just needed to know what it was.
Oh, it is their community. It's essentially a community engagement plan that details how it is they're going to provide better customer service than they have in the past. And it was essentially the lack of transparency that they were giving their customers. But when you look at the plan, it doesn't really actually deal with the transparency. And I'm not sure what the Utilities Board is going to do with it or the OCA. They just submitted it into docket today.
Okay. And then I wanted to go back to just the feasibility, the final feasibility study and report. Again, it's been a while since we've talked that. So I'm going to go back and look at my notes. But again, if I remember right, they gave us what they could give us. And I think the implication is that there was some proprietary stuff in there that they wouldn't give us. Does that sound right?
No, they gave us this feasibility study that was essentially done by a third party. When they went to the Iowa Utilities Board, they couldn't use that third party feasibility study because they didn't use real numbers in that study. And so they are required by the Utility Board to provide accurate numbers. And some of those numbers are actually in a public forum, right? So even within their public accessed, why can't I function my brain? Feasibility study. There's numbers that were not in the study they gave us, right? The study that they gave to the Utilities Board is very different than the study they gave us. And while there's some proprietary information in there, not all of it is, and we should have access to it. And they said they were going to release it. I mean, they said at the Utilities Board they were going to release their new feasibility study because they were asked about it multiple times.
Okay.
And then when I joined the council at our first utility meeting, when we talked to Alliant, or they were in the room, we had brought up this feasibility study and asked, can we see this feasibility study? I think that's what Steve is referring to. And they said, yes, we'll send it to you soon.
Well, their comment about sending it to us soon was May 2nd or whatever, whenever we had the hearing at the Hotel Winneshiek.
Oh yeah, long time ago.
Mr. Koopa, right?
Good old Terry.
So Chad, can you request that then, please?
Yeah, again, I'll go back and look at my notes and see how they responded to that. Emily, I'll share that with you to make sure I'm asking the right thing, right?
And again, Chad, just will you ask for it, please?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And then, Steve, I hear your point about wanting access to that information, and I share that, and I just can't sit there and not think about the time sensitiveness of this. So I would support Andy, you moving forward with some sort of negotiating team and meeting with Alliant.
Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. Chad, if you could maybe contact them and ask them for some times. Or maybe
Yes.
maybe we could figure out something too for us.
Yep.
I know night's going to work better for me.
Nights do it probably for Johanna.
Sorry, what was that, Emily?
I was saying nights probably for Johanna work. I don't want to speak for Johanna, but
I don't share the same newfound flexibility that some people fortunately or unfortunately have. But if there's a 5-day heads up, I can work something out.
All right.
Eddie, just maybe one final thought. I am reflecting on some points of frustration of either experiencing a new dynamic in our relationship with Alliant, moments of lack of clarification, of communication, or lack of transparency in answers. And I think it would behoove us as a council to document these incidences and consider exercising our right to submit complaints to the IUB if we are experiencing any questionable practices with our current electric provider, and would support council action should it be needed in the future to submit those complaints.
Second.
Yep.
All right, does anyone else have any more comments regarding the Alliant piece of the meeting?
Well, I'm an old guy and I have to think things through here a couple times. So in terms of Locust Road, we have 3 options. One is sign a franchise and they cover the expenses. 2 is pay them to move the utilities. Isn't there a 3rd option as well?
Not do the project.
Well,
No.
they can also, they can bill, so they can send a bill to their ratepayers for the project too.
Right. We have the option under paying for it is either the city being a build or the customers paying directly to Alliant for the work being done. So that's what I was saying. Okay, that's the
Correct. And then the difference is if we have a franchise agreement, it's spread out through all their customers. And if it's not, it's here in Decorah, is the way I understand it, right?
I think that's right, Andy.
Okay.
So then the question I have is, if we pay for it either with our circuit customers or by the city, is it then our work? Is it belong to us? And is it possible to be rebuilt if it becomes municipalized, that we would have to pay for that again? That's what I need clarity about.
I think that's a question for our lawyer who is not on it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think one would say we would definitely argue that for sure if we went to the utilities board, but only utilities board could determine that.
Right.
Conceivably, if it's already been paid for and Alliant didn't have to pay for it and we paid for it, then they can't depreciate something we paid for, right? I mean, that's. So
Well,
you would
that's
need
my
we would need to
question.
look there, and it would be a point of. It would definitely be a point of.
If Alliant paid for it because their ratepayers paid the bill, that's what I'm saying, is I don't want it to be a back door that we have to buy it again.
Oh, we would if we signed a franchise agreement and Alliant.
No, I'm not saying
spends,
not.
Well, let's say if Alliant Energy spends $1.5 million on our infrastructure, then yes, we would conceivably have to buy the depreciated value of that infrastructure when we would take over the utility. But you were asking if we spent $1.5 million on that infrastructure, right?
Either directly the city of Decorah or indirectly by our ratepayers being through their bill.
Yeah, I mean, one would presume it works both ways. So if Alliant pays for it through all of their customers, we have to pay it back through depreciation if we buy it. If we've bought it, essentially our customers have bought that segment, one would assume, but it would have to be, it would go in court that we wouldn't have to buy it back.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Residential water only customer accounts. Chad, do you want to go over that again briefly, please?
Okay. We'd had this conversation back, I think, in mid-February regarding several different pocket areas of the community that have different arrangements as far as the utilities that they're receiving and the utilities that they are paying for. I tried to put together a chart that really kind of broke it down a little more succinctly, color-coded by who's paying for what and who's receiving what, and then put a recommendation box off to the side there. Rather than just run through that, I would just simply ask if there were any questions about those individual properties. But basically, our policy is going to outline that we're asking for those residents that receive services that they simply pay for the services that they receive. And that's really the bottom line. With the exception of we have to have a way to meter sewer discharge. And rather than put in an expensive sewer meter, which there are such things, but they're cumbersome, messy, expensive, we can put in a water meter and track their water usage, and then through correlation, bill them for that amount of effluent through the sewer discharge. If they have that meter in their home, we would then bill them for that meter minimum charge, because that does require staff monitoring and administration. So if somebody's a sewer only customer, they would pay the minimum water charge to have the meter in the house and have it read, but they would only pay the actual quantity used on the sewer discharge side. That's the only exception. There are a couple of places that are already doing that. There's a couple of folks that should be doing that aren't. And again, those are notated in that spreadsheet. So essentially our policy is, let's have people pay for what they're using.
Pretty common sense deal here. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think
Okay,
we can,
so if there aren't any questions on that, and certainly you can go through it in a little more detail, but otherwise we'd set that up to present to the council at the next council meeting for approval.
that sounds good to me, Ted.
Very good.
All right.
I have a question about utility meeting notes. So Chad, do you take notes during committee meetings? Will you share them so that we have meeting minutes?
Absolutely. I do create actual minutes
Okay.
for the record, and those are there. So yes, I can give you, do you want these? Do you want others? Do you want any of them, all of them?
Are they usually, where are they? Are they usually in a Dropbox and I miss them?
No. Yeah,
Okay,
It's not been our practice to share those. We just have never. That's no reason. That's just the condition. But they are archived they're probably older than me, but I've done it for at least 9 years. So there's at least 9 years worth of them. They're just here in the archives.
Okay. I wouldn't mind seeing them.
Okay.
I mean, not all of them, but just in general practice, I wouldn't mind seeing the minutes after we've had a meeting.
Yep. Okay.